If you eat one meal a day, the biggest mistake is thinking the whole fast is one experience. It isn't. The first stretch is still your last meal doing its job. The middle can feel uncomfortable without meaning something is going wrong. And the final stretch is where people often tell the wrong story about what their body is doing. Picture your house during a storm. At first, you're still on the main grid. Then the lights flicker. Then backup systems start carrying more of the load. If you don't understand that sequence, every flicker feels like failure. That's what makes OMAD so confusing. People hit one rough patch, assume the whole method is bad for them, and never stay long enough to see which phase they were actually in. So don't think of this as simply eating less. Think of it as an energy access timeline. Your body doesn't react all at once. It changes in stages. We're going to walk through those stages hour by hour. What tends to happen? What it may feel like? Where most people quit too early. And there's one part of this timeline that almost nobody talks about. It's not the fasting window. And once you see it, the whole thing reads differently. Phase 1 is the fed phase, roughly the first few hours after that meal. Nothing magical has happened yet. Food is still being broken down. Glucose is still entering the blood. Insulin is still helping move that energy where it needs to go. If you picture the body like a house during rough weather, this is the part where the main grid is still online. The lights are normal. The system is not under pressure yet. That matters because many people imagine fat loss starts the second the plate is gone. Usually, it doesn't feel that dramatic. Early on, your body is still working through what you just gave it. Some of that energy gets used right away. Some of it gets stored in short-term reserve, mostly as glycogen in the liver and muscles. Think of that as the home battery. Close by, easy to pull from, but not endless. Then you move into the next stretch, often around the middle of the gap between meals. Incoming energy falls off. The battery starts carrying more of the load. This is where the experience changes. Hunger may show up in waves. Mood may dip a little. Focus may wobble. For some people, this is the moment that feels most dramatic, and it's where many quit. But this phase is easy to misread. A hunger wave is not automatically a crisis. Very often, it's a signal pulse. It rises, gets your attention, and then fades if no food arrives. That's a useful thing to notice in your own body. If the urge to eat comes in a burst and softens after a little time, you may be looking at a transition signal, not an emergency. But this is still not the real flip point. The bigger question comes next. What happens when that easy reserve starts running low? Now you reach the stretch. People talk about most, because this is where the experience often stops feeling random. As the fasting window gets longer, that short-term reserve becomes less available. The body does not jump in one clean move from glucose to pure fat use. There is overlap, but the balance starts to shift. Insulin tends to stay lower. Stored energy becomes easier to access. The liver starts helping more with that transition. And ketones may begin rising enough for some people to notice a real difference in how steady they feel. This is where the home power analogy matters. The main grid is no longer carrying the whole house by itself. The battery is running down, so the backup generator starts taking more of the load. Not all at once, not at full speed, but enough that the lights stop flickering. That helps explain a pattern many people notice. The earlier part of the fast can feel noisy. This part may feel smoother. Hunger often becomes less dramatic. Energy may feel calmer. Focus may feel more even. Some people feel that shift clearly. Others barely notice it at first, especially if sleep is poor, stress is high, or the previous meal set them up for a harder transition. And this is where a lot of people tell the wrong story. Feeling better here does not mean your body has become some perfect fat-burning machine overnight. It means the fuel mix may be changing, and the swings may be getting smaller. That is a better read of what is happening. Here is a simple self-check. Notice the pattern, not the drama. Is hunger coming like a wave that peaks and passes, or like a steady collapse that keeps getting worse? That difference can tell you whether you are meeting a transition signal or whether something about the setup is not working well for you. But even this is not the full picture. The next important question is not just what your body is using during the fast. It is what state you are in when you finally eat again, and why that return can either support the rhythm or wipe it out fast. So what happens when you finally eat? After a long gap, your body is not in the same state it was in a few hours after your last meal. That does not mean it becomes magical. It means context has changed. Hunger is different. Insulin response may feel different. Fullness may arrive faster than expected in some people. And the way you break the fast can shape how the next several hours feel. Go back to the house analogy one more time. If the power has been carried carefully through backup systems, you do not slam the whole neighborhood back onto the grid with every appliance running at once. You bring things online in a controlled way. That is the catch with OMAD. People often treat the meal like a prize at the end of suffering. They eat fast, overshoot fullness, stack a huge refined carb load on top of strong hunger, and then blame the fasting window for the crash that follows. In many cases, the problem is not only the gap, it is the re-entry. A steadier return usually looks simpler. Start with enough protein to make the meal feel real. Add fiber-rich foods that slow the pace. Add fats based on tolerance and total intake, not because fat is automatically magic. If someone includes carbohydrates, the question is not whether carbs are evil. It is whether the meal creates a sharp swing they feel an hour or two later. This is also where the muscle fear usually shows up. People assume a long gap means the body must be tearing through muscle. In reality, the story is more context-dependent than that. Total protein intake, training, energy status, age, and the overall pattern across the week matter more than one dramatic assumption about one fasting window. So before judging OMAD, do not ask only, "How long did I fast?" Ask, "What kind of re-entry did I create?" Now, a limit that matters. OMAD is not a universal upgrade. Some people tolerate long gaps well. Others feel more stressed, sleep worse, train worse, or end up overeating because the setup pushes too much pressure into one part of the day. Pregnancy, a history of disordered eating, medication that affects blood sugar, and some high-stress situations all change the equation. This is biology, not a character test, and adaptation matters. Most people who quit OMAD quit inside what I'd call the friction window, roughly the first few days when your body is still learning to pull from stored energy instead of the next incoming meal. That window is real. It tends to feel like fatigue, irritability, and hunger that seems too loud to ignore. But the friction window has an end. A mismatch doesn't. If things are still getting worse after the first couple of weeks of consistent eating and sleeping well, that's a different signal. That's your body telling you the setup doesn't fit. Not that fasting is universally bad. That is the real takeaway. One meal a day is not just fewer eating moments. It is a sequence, a signal pattern, a change in how your body moves from incoming fuel to stored reserve to re-entry. Your body is not random. It reads timing. It reads pressure. It reads repetition. So if you try a pattern like this, watch the phases, not just the clock. And tell me this in the comments. Where do you notice the biggest shift? Early hunger, the middle transition, or the meal itself?